and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to another potluck wrap up. This is where I take titles that I have read over the previous months, put them in this teapot, take them out at random and wrap them up for you as quickly as possible, because I've just realised I've left my timer over here because I have a set time. So the timer is 20 minutes. It's just such a good sound. Anyway, right, timer, 20 minutes is going. So the first book, I didn't read a lot, to be fair, in March. As preamble, I read about 5 books, which is very little for me, but admittedly, I had COVID and I couldn't concentrate on anything, so I mainly watched television, which is not like me. So, first one is a March one. This is Mrs. Rochester's Ghost. Now, I did a whole vlog reading this, so I can very quickly summarise. If you enjoy a traditional, like, contemporary thriller, almost formulaic, if you also really enjoy Jane Eyre, and you like to know kind of where something's going, but you enjoy the occasional plot twist, would absolutely recommend this. It was a really fun read. It was a really well written thriller. It definitely understood Gothic. It definitely understood what the pace needed for a thriller, and overall I really enjoyed it, and I will leave the link for the vlog down below and see all my thoughts and all the carnage, because it was whilst reading this that I got COVID. So, and I also moved house. It was a lot, but I enjoyed it. It was a good read. I think I gave it 3.5 to 4 stars. It was a good time. So there we go. First one in under a minute. Love that for me. Okay, next. And this is another March one, so Blackwater Sister. Another thriller and another one that completely surprised me. Now, if you have been around, you will know that I host Gothtober every year alongside Olivia's Catastrophe and Tish, and last year for Gothtober we did a giveaway where we gave away 3 hardbacks, and each host picked one of their favourite hardbacks of the year to recommend, and Tish went with the signed and swanky new version of If We Were Villains. I went for The Murder of Graham Catton because it's epic, and Olivia suggested this one, and it was the only one of the 3 that I hadn't read, so I knew I would have to pick it up at some point, and I also knew that Abby over at Abbey of Pelennor would probably really enjoy it if Olivia recommended it, so I was like, let's buddy read. And then I moved house and Abby finished the book, and I was maybe 3 or 4 chapters in when I just completely lost track of who I was and where I was and all that other kind of stuff. It was kind of a very split experience for me, and it meant the first 4 chapters, which very much look at how insulated the main character is and how sad she is, and it feels very literary because it's very literary writing style, and I was like, this is going to be really slow. And the one redeeming feature for me in those 4 chapters, other than how beautiful the writing was and how interesting the setting was the cranky granny who was a ghost in Jess's head. And I thought, you know what, I'm here for her if nothing else, and I wanted to know why her relationship with her daughter was so strained, because Jess is the granddaughter, so like I was like, what's gone on here? And then the mafia got involved. There were people getting hit over the head with pipes. There was like all kinds of murder and mayhem and just carnage. And like the next 2/3 of the book moves so quickly and so expertly written that I was just like, this was wild. This, and I described it in a blog as a Jungle Cat wild. It is ferocious and such a good read, and I gave it 5 stars, and I don't know, like, it led me into such a full sense of security. And I love it when a book can do that. I love a book when it's like, I think it's going to be one thing and then suddenly it explodes in my face and it's just a great time. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I'm just a lot. So I look for a book that is also a lot. And I loved it. I loved it. 5 stars. Great work. We're off to a good start, to be fair. To be fair, I think there's only like 1 in here that I've got anything even remotely negative to say, so we should be alright. Next is Pretty Honest, which is another one that I read in March. I literally just shook this. You watched me shake it, and I'm still picking all the ones up from this month. Pretty Honest is a non-fiction about the beauty industry and what kind of products you need for your face, makeup-wise, and body, etc. It's written by Sally Hughes, who was and probably still is, a beauty reviewer for The Guardian? I literally just read this, I should remember. It was a really quick read though, because there is so much in here that is kind of condensed down into really like a basic writing style that even if you have no knowledge of makeup whatsoever, you'll still understand what's going on and you can cherry pick the information that you need. So obviously, I skipped the whole chapter about teen makeup because I'm not a teen anymore, and I will probably come back to the senior chapter when I'm a senior. But it was just really interesting to see all these different things and to see what products are actually trying to do versus what you need them to do, and the kinds of trigger words and phrases you should listen out for if someone is trying to sell you something, what kind of chemicals to look out for, and things like that. And for someone like me, where I enjoy putting on makeup, obviously I've not got any makeup on today, I've broken out all over my face. I never put makeup on when I've broken out because I don't want to mix it up with my makeup and make it worse. Like, that sounds gross to me. So I'm very, very careful about what I put on my face anyway, but it is a hobby, right? I'm not a professional, I would never be, I'm really bad at it. So it was really interesting to kind of have that, like, expert talk about their field, about something I'm mildly interested in, and I'm now more interested in because of the way she wrote about it. So I gave it 3 stars, I thought it was really interesting, and it was one of my TBR vets, which means that by reading this, I can put something onto my TBR from completing this. So I love that for me. The TBR vets thing, basically, I am not buying any more books until I clear at least 10 of my TBR vets. So next is The Song Rising. I read this in Feb, and I did this as an audiobook whilst I was travelling between my parents' house and where I'm living now. And it's really interesting because I wasn't sure about The Song Rising before I read it, because I loved The Bone Season. The Mime Order just didn't grab me the same way. It was so political, and it had gone from being fantasy dystopia to political dystopia, and I definitely prefer one more than the other. But this is kind of like, you know, in Hunger Games, when you're like, okay, we get it, like, there's a rebellion, but she finally actually starts acting on it and actually starts messing with the government. That's this book in the series, and it was so good that I have bought The Mask Falling, because I wasn't entirely convinced I was going to commit to this series. I thought I bought The Bone Season, and then I bought The Mime Order and The Song Rising off of enjoying The Bone Season. And if I hadn't enjoyed this, I wouldn't have continued, because I know that after The Mask Falling, there's going to be 2 more after that. So I was pleasantly surprised, and it has got me back into loving the writing. I really liked the plot. I loved the characters. I loved how awful some of the characters are. Some of the other authority figures that are also rebellious authority figures were really interesting to me. I thought that was really well done. So if you didn't like The Mime Order as much as The Bone Season and you weren't sure, I would recommend giving it a go. It is, I enjoyed it. It was good times. I'm powering through it today. Gonna power through. And then I'm gonna have nothing to review next month because I don't read anything. Okay, next one is LadetteM, which I read back in November. I've actually already unhauled this because I didn't want to bring it with me. This is a memoir turned graphic novel where the author of this has talked about their experiences with being deaf and what that is like, being deaf in a society that is incredibly ableist. It was incredibly interesting and kind of eye-opening, because I think sometimes when it's ableist behaviour, you don't necessarily realise it's ableist behaviour. You don't necessarily acknowledge that what you're doing is ableist in that way. And I know that there are still things that I do that are incredibly ableist. I don't actively put captions on my videos because I don't necessarily have time when it comes to doing this, but also because I am terrible at being organised. So I don't always know what video is going to go up when, to do the captions for it, and those are excuses. They are ableist excuses. So it's things like that that's really interesting to kind of like see it in that format and kind of be confronted with your own ableism. But obviously if you are disabled in some way, it is a bit patronising. The reason I had it in the first place is because it was unhauled from Emma Novella, who said that she found it incredibly patronising as someone who needs certain things because of their disability. So it kind of went both ways. I did enjoy it. I don't need to reread it, and I've unhauled it for that reason. Okay. It's fine, Hannah. Just take it out of the jar and put it back in. That's fine. That's normal. History is by Herodicus, which I forgot to get out there. It's right there. It's right there. Okay. So you may wonder, like, Hannah, why? And you know what? You'd be valid in asking why. I didn't put this on my TBR in the first place. My brother did because he's an arsehole. My brother got Kieran pick. Kieran picked this. Thanks again. But also, it was on my TBR for a reason. So last year, obviously, I read 300 books, or tried to read 300 books, did not actually read 300 books. That is not a claim I can make. Read 224 books, though, and towards the end of the year, I was really cramming in short reads in an attempt to get to the end. And I really left it too late to do that. But it meant that in December, when I was doing that TBR, I didn't want any more short reads. I didn't want to read a book that was only 200 pages long. I wanted something that I could sink into and just live in for like a month. And that is exactly what this is. I'm not going to go and tell you to read this, because unless you give a shit about Greek history, and like, I mean really dry Greek history, this is not the one for you. Read Pandora's Jar, read A Thousand Ships, both by Natalie Haynes, they're great. Read Circe by Madeline Miller, also amazing. Don't pick up this unless, like me, you just need it in that moment and then you'll never read it again. Do you know what I mean? Like, I read it. Did I consider annotating it? Yes. Did I think that 800 pages of annotations was completely unnecessary? Also yes. So I'll put it back. I'll put it back. Oh, I've got two. We'll do both. I'll do this one first. So we have Rhapsodic. Okay. I think I was gifted this. Was I gifted this? I was either gifted this or someone unhauled it to me, and I put it in my TBR, and I think it was the third time it had gone in my TBR, and I had decided in December if I didn't read it then, I was never going to. And then I listened to it as an audiobook, and it was just a good time. It was just a good time. It was like if Crescent City wasn't necessarily about Faye, but was about, like, I don't know, other things. It has a very similar writing style to Sarah J Maas. It's very similar, like, sassy characters, like the sexual tension's all there, like she's a killer straight up, so that's a good time. She can like manipulate people because she's a siren. That was a good time. And I immediately bought the second one, which is A Strange Hymn, I think. Which I'm really excited to get to because it was just a good time and I was really pleasantly surprised. I do like a fantasy romance, but they have to fall into a very specific niche of not making me cringe. This didn't make me cringe. I actually really enjoyed it. If you need something sultry and a good time, I don't know what this was. I don't know why I felt the need to start wiggling. I really wish I hadn't wiggled because I know I'll keep that in. I know I will. Right, the next one is Empress and Anaya. This is a short story written by Candice Carty-Williams, who did Queenie, which is over there, you can't see it. But this is essentially Freaky Friday, but if two young girls of colour swapped bodies. And one young girl of colour is lighter skinned and also very attractive, and the other one is darker skinned and stereotypically not attractive. It's not that she's not attractive, it's just stereotypically. There's like things that she sees about herself that she doesn't think are attractive. And basically one of them is in a broken home and one of them isn't, and they experience that life overnight when they kind of like swap bodies for a day and kind of go, and it's like, it's really eye-opening again, but it's just a really cute story and it made me cry. And it was just, Candice Carty-Williams has such an expert way of talking about young women, and I knew that in Queenie, and it's so authentic and so honest, and I saw it in Queenie. This was an immediate buy, and she's got another book out which I think is something like People Pleaser or something to do with people, which I'm really excited for because I think Candice Carty-Williams is going to be an author by author for me moving forwards. It was great. It was great, and I've waited so long to tell you how great this little book is. Would recommend. How many pages is it? It's 140 pages, so it's not quite short enough if you're doing a Aurelium to do the under 100 pages, but it would count as a short read. And it's also a short read, like it's little, but it's cute. It's really fucking cute. So yes, this is my signed edition. So go get yourself one. It's great. It's great. I'm running out of bits of paper. That's never happened to me before. How exciting. How exciting. Okay, we've got Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Now I've borrowed Danny's copy, which I think is the Waterstones edition. I did this as an audiobook on NetGalley, and it is also the book of the month, although technically it's 3 months, for the Book Wanderers Readathon. And it's a really cute YA fantasy. There's nothing necessarily exceptional about it. There's nothing that made it a 5 stars for me, but there's also nothing that I can fault about it either. The writing style is very slow and lyrical. The characters are really compelling. There just wasn't enough aggression, probably. It's probably just that it's a very nice book. And if you like a very nice, safe, gentle YA, it's beautifully written, it's a beautiful book, and it is what it is. Like I said, I don't have like bad things to say about it, it's just where my taste lies. If someone doesn't die bloody, do I really care? Probably not. I'm a horrible person. Have I only got 3 left? Ooh, how exciting. Okay, next is, oh my god, finally, this is the oldest book. This is it. Love is a Revolution from June of last year. Now, Love is a Revolution is a love story meets contemporary meets activism rep book by Renee Watson, who wrote Pieces of Me, which is about a young BIPOC woman kind of coming to terms with who she is and piecing herself together through collage, art and poetry. Beautifully written, stunningly done. This is the second Renee Watson that I've ever read. Didn't enjoy it as much, but that's not to say that it is a bad book. I did enjoy this. I gave it 3.5 to 4 stars. And basically, this is about a young girl called Nala who, basically, it's the summer, she's looking to relax, she's looking to have a good time, right up until her cousin joins what is essentially an activism cult, and starts getting really into activism and you know, representing blackness and blackness in New York specifically. And she meets this boy, Ty, through her cousin, and basically lies to him and says that she is also an activist, and then slowly but surely starts actually doing things for activism in a very performative way. And it's a very interesting look at performative activism, for a start. The difference between someone who is an activist because they want to be an activist versus someone who's doing it for like an ulterior motive, which I guess kind of goes under performative, but you understand what I'm saying. Doing something because a boy likes it, which would never recommend trying something because a boy likes it, unless that thing is rugby, because then if you're a girl playing rugby, they become scared of you, and that is me. That's where I turned out, and I turned out alright. I'm alone, but I'm alright. And it was just a really interesting book. I buddy read this with Olivia, and like I said, it wasn't as good as Piecing Me Together, but it was a really interesting read, and I would be interested to reread it again all in one go, because obviously we were doing like chapter chunks because we were reading it together. Parts of the narrative were very slow, parts of the narrative were very tropey, and I found it really frustrating that the cousin, who has been Nala's cousin her entire life, that they have shared everything with her, had such a problem with sharing activism with her cousin and sharing Ty with her cousin, when she hasn't had a problem with sharing anything else up until this point. And it really looks at that kind of like sisterly dynamic. Nala's mother in this is not a good mother, so I would definitely say like trigger warnings for like child neglect and things like that. That is really like prominent in this book as well. So there were moments when I was like, surely you would sympathise. If you're an activist and you're trying to be a good person, actively trying to be a good person, empathy shouldn't be out of your reach. So there were moments like that kind of brought it down for me, because I just didn't believe that, but then obviously it causes conflict and and the ending was a bit, you can kind of guess the ending, but it is done in a way that feels authentic, so I guess that's something. So yes, 3.5 to 4 stars. I enjoyed it. It was a short read and a good time, and I will be picking up another Renee Watson soon. Hopefully. Oh my god. Oh no, I lied. I have 4 left, including this one. So then we have Ella Enchanted. This was another March one. This was a very, 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 very short read, but I really enjoyed it. Not the 5 stars that it was when I first read it. When I first read this, I was maybe like 12, 13 years old. Was obsessed. I used to reread this all the time. What I liked is the fact that even though I'm rereading stuff and I know, oh, there we go, there's my 20 minutes. Even though we're rereading stuff and I know what's going to come up next, I still wasn't mad about it. There are still elements of this retelling that feel like an original kind of retelling. They add things to original fairy tales that I really like. Obviously there's like misogyny in it that I didn't see when I was a kid. Obviously there are moments where I'm like, okay, this is both really slow and really quick because it's a middle grade. So there are moments when it's like, oh, and then a year passed, and you're just like, where? When? You just spent an entire 3 chapters explaining the equivalent of an hour to me, but now it's a year later. Like, moments like that. But the characters are so wholesome, and like there's so many things about it that I'm like, yeah, there is quite clearly elitism and racism, because if you're not a human or a fairy, you're kept in a cage. So that's fun. There's things that I see as an adult that I didn't see as a kid, and probably kids wouldn't notice or care about, but they're things that I've noticed now, so... But it's another TBR vet, so again, can put something else on my TBR now that I've read a TBR vet. So there we have it. How many did we get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which I think is a personal best. There or thereabouts. So let me know in the comments down below, are there any of these books that you're interested in picking up now that you've heard what I thought of them? Don't forget to check out those links down below. Buying something from Waypoint supports me and my content, and other than that, have a nice day.